stage, you're a cowboy in lights, charming the audience night after night. They clap their hands for you, they all wish you well. They go home to families, you go home to hotels. Well, there's cranky bartenders, old chambermaids, young waitresses, all underpaid. Some treat you with contempt, some with respect. Their faces stay with you, their names you forget. You're a rambler, a singer of songs. Women don't understand and don't wait for you long. Now you gotta keep moving, traveling on. The road's calling you. You wish you were gone. Some call you a rambler, some call you a rogue. Some think you're a gambler, some think you're a joke. If I knew you better, I might not agree, but all I know of you is what I can see. With guitar in your hand and the light in your eyes, you come on so strong, you appear to be wise. But when it's all over, you've nothing to do but sit in some bar room and down quite a few. You're a rambler, a singer of songs. Women don't understand and don't stay with you for very long. Now you gotta keep moving, traveling on. The road's calling you. You wish you were gone. Tired of the East Coast, you long for the West, where the sun always shines and the beer tastes the best. But you need what you're getting up there on the stage, and you like making more than a working man's wage. So you're trapped in the music that you do so well. You're trapped in the comforts of fancy hotels. It's nothing you've said, I just think I can tell. If you had your way, you'd be gone. You're a rambler, a singer of songs. Women don't understand and don't love you for very long. Now you gotta keep moving, traveling on. The road's calling you. You wish you were gone. Now you gotta keep moving, traveling on. The road's calling you. Now you're gone.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Friday show, What's on Your Mind? That song, of course, was by my wonderful friend, Christine Lavin. I am such a fan of hers. Every time I was listening to her all day this afternoon in anticipation of her being on the show today. I am so thrilled. She was on my show when I was doing interviews. And when I asked her to come back and be a part of this, she's got so many projects coming up that we're going to be going over. So anyway, what's on your mind? For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, thank you. Please leave your comments in the comments section so we can see what's on your mind, and perhaps we'll talk about what's on your mind. But this show is a free space for anyone to say anything about what's going on in their careers, with their work. Well, the same thing, basically. What's going on politically in the world. But we'll cover anything. What's on my mind? Today marks 1 week since I left social media. I'm still on Blue Sky and LinkedIn, but I left Meta, and it's been wonderful. And I'm very, very excited. So I've got 5 people waiting in the wings. No one knows who I'm going to bring up first. I'm just going to randomly click on a button and see who pops up. And let's see who's here. And it's my dear friend, Michelle Collier. And make sure you're not muted, Michelle. Thank you.
I just
And
unmuted.
everyone, you don't need to do anything with your microphones. Hello?
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Richard?
I'm doing great. Michelle, I want to let everyone know you work at Swing 46, and you were there on Friday nights or Saturday? Friday nights. Am I right? Saturday nights. So I was there a couple of weeks ago, and I had the best time. Not only did you sound incredible, but the fact that people can get up and dance and do whatever they want. We may talk about that, we may not. But I want to know, what's on your mind, Michelle?
What's on my mind? A lot. The state of the world.
Well, let me ask you this. We don't need to go into what's going on in the state of the world, because everyone knows what's going on in the state of the world. But I can ask you, how are you coping with what's going on in the world? And what do you do to navigate these tough and strange times?
Well, thank goodness I have music and a creative outlet just to find joy and love and kindness and the bonds that bring us all together, because there's so much that's trying to separate us. There's so many forces at work right now trying to pit us against each other and make us fearful and hateful. And it's a very ugly, horrible thing. And I just try to find the best in everyone that I meet.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone that I know. And I know that we all do not have the same outlook on particular things. We don't agree politically or what's the best solution for a particular problem. But I know that all of my friends and the people that I love are people who have good hearts and good minds and are thoughtful, and they may not think the same as I do on some things, but I try to be kind and understanding, and music is a very good way of finding that, because we all, I mean, who doesn't love music? There may be some, but I don't know.
I do believe that music, the arts, all of this, I mean, again, we're living in a very divided time. I was just reading an article before I went live today about all the people that are boycotting Kennedy Center right now because of certain things. And when the Kennedy Center was built and created, it was created as a unifier to bring us together as musicians. There are some musicians, Dolly Parton, for one, Reba McEntire, they never discuss their politics, because it said their goal is to just go out and entertain the audience. I celebrate whatever choices every artist makes, as long as it is not to denigrate, bully, divide. And as long as an artist is bringing music to elevate people, I think that that's the bottom line right there. So yeah. I never really get involved into the nitty gritty of what someone else's politics are. But I want to ask you, I mean, because the situation you perform at Swing 46, which is a jazz, swing, dance club. Great food as well, I will add, and the service is phenomenal to the wait staff there. And you also manage the venue. So, have you found any change in terms of people going out and looking for the arts since the election?
Well, yes and no. I mean, actually, it's not good. I think in general, nightlife in general in New York City, there's so much to do. There really is, and there's wonderful, wonderful options. But I don't think that people are going out as much. Some try, but I think the economy, people are afraid to spend money.
Mm-hmm.
I think that since the pandemic, the whole New York City, the city that never sleeps, that is not true anymore. Unfortunately, New York City sleeps after 10 p.m. At least in some parts. Midtown, you would expect that it's, going very lively and well until the wee hours of the morning, but not always, and especially not the weeknights. It gets pretty quiet.
Well,
And
Michelle, I want to bring on our
hard.
next guest, and actually, you're going to bring on our next guest
Oh,
because what you can do is you can pull a number 1 through 4, and they don't know what position they're in, and we're going to surprise somebody and bring them on.
So I have to pick a number?
Yeah, 1 through 4.
Three. It's a magic number.
And that's my friend David Edwards, and he's magical. So, David, I want to ask you. You can talk about what's on your mind. You can talk about what we just discussed with Michelle, or you can take us in a completely different direction.
I'll tell you, listening to the two of you, you may know, Richard, that I make my living as both an actor and a director. And for the last almost 2 years, I've been the artistic director of a theater company here in New York called Out of the Box. And the last main stage production that we did, we opened the night after the election. So it was earth shattering, to say the least. There were not many people in the house. A lot of us were gobsmacked at what had gone on, and we knew we had to carry on. And the play that we did, it was actually 2 one-acts, and one of them was a world premiere of a play, and it was something I had been pushing the company to do. It wasn't a light comedy. It wasn't an evening of light comedy. So it was a challenge, but the audience was small, the smallest we've ever had it Out of the Box, at least since I've been there. Mm-hmm. But they were a mighty crowd, and the encouraging thing that I felt is that they needed to get out of the house and see some theater that night. So they really wanted to be there. And that touched me very deeply. We had talkbacks every night after the play. And even though the houses were small, the intensity of the interest was very big. And, we have to look forward and find some moments of optimism, and of course, fight with our art in any way we can. But I also saw an old interview with Joan Rivers the other day, and of course, what she said made me laugh, but it also seemed very profound. She at one point she said, "When you find yourself in hell, walk faster." So we have to eyes on the prize, and I think there's a lesson to be learned right now in that when you're not in power, so to speak, we all want to remember that it's important to be compassionate with the other people when you are once again in power, because we're facing something that we're not getting a lot of compassion from.
Well, you know, I was really observing. I watched the speech the other night, and I was really observing truly how divided we all are right now. And can you imagine Michelle, David, myself, and my other guest as well, going on stage and saying, okay, I want all the Republicans on the right side of the room. I want the Democrats on the other side of the room. And if you're undecided, please leave. That's not who we are as artists. And it's truly who we are not as a
You know, and the other thing is that we actually had some from the play prior that I had directed for the company. We had a few alumni from the cast, and they were talking amongst themselves, and there were a lot of hurt feelings because people made assumptions about the other ones, and it just, there was so much that got in the way of our communicating and enjoying the theater experience that night. Now, I don't mean to be namby-pamby about it, because we can't just shut our eyes and just go to the theater and say everything is hearts and flowers, but you know, we do have to listen to one another in order to move forward. And
well, let me ask you, do you watch White Lotus?
I do.
Well, did you see they recently reflected on that with the three women that were,
And it's amazing that it was filmed before the election. So
but they handled it so perfectly.
Yeah, they really did. And you know, Richard, not to blow smoke up your ass, but the whole thing about that when you do your interviews and your shows here, you're not afraid to talk about things beyond the performing arts and how it reflects on our lives, because it does. I mean, we're in for a bumpy ride in terms of funding and in terms of how are we going to deal with nonprofits? I mean, you mentioned the Kennedy Center. I mean, none of us wants the Kennedy Center to go under, but there's a great faction of people saying, you know, we're glad that they've canceled certain programs and people are pulling out. Well, where does that leave us ultimately? One of the great art centers in our country can be a big white elephant, and if we're not careful. So, you know, it's not, there's no easy answer, but
well, let me ask you this: the show that you did the night after the election, it's very interesting. I have a very dear friend. We are on opposite ends of the political spectrum, and we said many years ago, there's so many other things that we love about each other that we are able to check those things at the door. I know certain people say I cannot be friends with that person. No, but we don't discuss it. And she called me the day before the election. We had tickets to go to the theater the next night and dinner. And she said, you know, this could go either way. And I said, what are you talking about? She said, the election. I said, what election? She says, good, that's all I need to know. It never came up. We had an incredible dinner. But I want to ask the question that the show that you were doing, did it reflect what was going on in the world right now? Or did the audience find a way of what was going on in the play to reflect what we are actually going through?
Yes, and yes, and no, and no. What we did, the company itself was always doing classic plays, and our mission statement is to feature the work of artists over the age of 50, which I feel are an underrepresented. You know, actors at a certain age are at the top of their game, and yet we don't get enough wonderful roles. And we it's the same thing for directors and even playwrights. So I was very attached to the mission statement of this company, and I've directed 3 shows for them. But this one was a little bit different because we took a classic play called Trifles that's been around for 100 years. And you may know it. I see you're shaking your head in affirmation. It's studied in universities, and it's an early feminist play. But I coupled it with a brand new one act written by a man over 80, I believe, and it was in conversation with this play. It was very much about the dynamic between men and women, what our society views as the strengths of each gender, so to speak. So at face value, they seemed very different, but they were very much in conversation. And of course, for economic reasons, I used the same cast, the same set, all of that. And I was very excited about this possibility, but it was a big risk to do a brand new play. So for this company, for my board, everything. And it was unfortunate that it happened at a time where we couldn't have had more butts in the seats. But yes, it's important that people get 2 hours of escape, but also something to think about when they go home. That's my feeling. And I think we gave them both. But we're up for a very difficult run now, because we have very little in the coffers right now. And I honestly don't know what our main stage production is going to look like this year because of that. So it's scary, but we took a risk, and I feel like the risk will hopefully pay off. And
absolutely. So David, you're going to help bring on our next guest. So pull a number 1 through 3, and I will bring that next guest on.
All right, I guess it has to be 2.
And that is the incredible Luke Yankee.
Hello.
I love this man. And I had the great fortune, my husband and I, to break bread with him when we were recently in Palm Springs. So it's very good to see you. And I want to mention, a couple of things before we jump in. First of all, incredible show. I've seen it via Zoom. Marilyn, Mom, and Me. And this is about his mother, Eileen Eckerd, and the relationship with Marilyn Monroe when she was working on the film Bus Stop. Incredible piece. And this I love because he just did a show called The Jesus Hickey with our mutual friend, Joyce Bulifant. Yes. So that was great. So, Luke, I want to ask you, what's on your mind? It could be a completely different subject or build upon what we've already discussed today.
Well, to build slightly on what you've already been discussing, one of the things that I'm so struck by, and there was a quote by Toni Morrison about this, and I'm not going to try to recreate the quote because I know I would botch it up.
Who was a neighbor, by the way. I want to share that.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. But it's something along the lines of that in difficult times, the most important thing we can do as artists is to focus on our art. Is to focus on creating new work. And as David was saying, and of course it's difficult right now, but that's what we do. And people, really, more than ever at a time like this, people really need to laugh, to cry, to go to the theater, to go to concerts, etc., and to have an experience that takes them outside of themselves. And so that's why I'm focusing on these 2 particular plays in particular. And I want to start by talking about the Jesus Hickey, because I just did, as you mentioned, I just did it in Palm Springs with the fabulous Joyce Bulifant. And this is a play that I had done back in 2010 in Los Angeles with Harry Hamlin. And it's, but I decided, based on all of the attention that Oh Mary is getting, and the fact that there's definitely an audience for something zany and irreverent right now, I decided it was time to revive this play. And basically, it's the story of a young Irish girl who goes out necking with her boyfriend and gets a hickey in the shape of Jesus.
Now, but this happened.
No, it did not happen. But there was a point where I was fascinated with all those stories about the Virgin Mary grilled cheese sandwich and the cinnamon roll that looked like Mother Teresa that was called the nun bun, and all those crazy stories about the religious sightings. And so just as I was really kind of fixated on all of these religious sightings and actually wrote a TV pilot about them, right around that time, my teenage niece came home with her first hickey. And it was a big scandal in the family. And so I decided to juxtapose these two things and wrote this play about this young Irish girl who gets a hickey in the shape of Jesus. And she actually develops mystical healing powers, and people can be healed of any illness by touching the Jesus hickey. So now I will say that when it was done back in 2010 in LA with Harry Hamlin playing the girl's father, who was absolutely wonderful and has remained a good friend, things have changed a little bit since then, needless to say. And I'm out in Palm Springs, and I just did the play as a benefit for the Palm Springs Art Museum. And while this is a very liberal community, shall we say there are conservative pockets? Nothing against them, but they exist everywhere, needless to say. So the good folks at the Art Museum requested that I change the title. So I changed the title to The Love Bite. And, but I didn't change a word of the text, but just changed the title. Thought, okay, fine. If that's what is needed in this day and age, I have no problem with that. And people had an incredible response to it, standing ovation. Joyce Bulifant playing this foul-mouthed Irish grandmother. And Richard, as you know, and as some of your listeners will know, Joyce has this little tiny voice, and she's just, big television star from many years and Broadway star as well. And to hear Joyce in that funny little voice, just saying these foul things and playing this very bawdy Irish grandmother was just hysterical. So very excited. Sorry, what were you going to?
I'm interrupting because I want to
Sure.
get this in before we bring on our next guest.
Sure.
But isn't there a bit of a slippery slope? I realize that we've got those people with the pockets that are making a lot of decisions for us
Yes.
right now, that a title can be changed because someone is offended by that. And it's like, how far are we going to go with this?
I agree. And it would not have been my first choice to change the title, but it's always been a controversial title, and I knew that. And there are either people who love the title or there are people who bristle at it. And, if that's what it takes to get my work produced, like I said, I didn't change a word of the text, just changed the title. It's very funny. And because like many of us, I grew up with this woman who I called my surrogate Jewish mother. She was a dear friend of the family's, and her name was Connie Ilowitz. And when Connie saw the first reading of the play, she said, "Honey, I absolutely love the play. It's hysterical, but you're going to have to change the title because, as we all know, the Jews support the theater, and the Jews won't go see anything with Jesus in the title." So maybe Connie's got a point. So, and then of course with Marilyn Mom and Me, the play you mentioned with my mom and her very intense friendship with Marilyn Monroe during the shooting of Bus Stop, and how deeply that impacted her, and ultimately how it impacted me as her son. It just had its world premiere at International City Theater, the Equity Theater in Long Beach, California. Broke box office records, got an incredible response. There are a number of producers interested in it, and I am planning an all-star backers audition in New York in early October, and I'm determined to get that play to New York. And I'm
make
really
sure
thrilled.
that I'm on that list. Because I saw it via Zoom, and I absolutely loved it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, it's a very powerful piece. And basically, the two-sentence version is that a 40-something Luke, I do not play it myself because I'm way past 40, but a 40-something Luke learns that his mother is terminal, and he wants to get at some basic truths about their relationship before his mother dies by unraveling her intense friendship with Marilyn Monroe during the shooting at Bus Stop. So it works on several different levels. It's very autobiographical. I am very naked and very exposed in this play, but frankly, I think that's part of the reason people are relating to it the way they are. So I couldn't be more thrilled with the response it's getting.
That's great. We're going to bring on our next guest, and you're going to bring on our next guest. So there are two people left in the wings, one or two, and they're both smiling. I can see them both. So you bring on the next guest, and we'll go from there.
Let's go with number one.
And you heard her at the top of the show. And that's our dear friend Christine Lavin, who I love, love, love. And incredible writer, incredible singer, incredible entertainer. The first time I saw you, Christine, I don't know if you remember this, it was in North Carolina at the art. It was their version of APAP. and Linda Lavin was there as well. And you were the entertainment. And my dear, dear friend, Diana Templeton, who you may know, it's a good thing he can't read my mind. I knew that song long before I knew you. But welcome to the show. Anything that is on your mind, it could be about what we've spoken about, or you can take us in a new direction.
Well, I'm fascinated by Luke and his talk of religion because I became a minister for the Universal Life Church about 10 years ago, but I have never married anyone. I became a minister for that church, and I still haven't done anything about this, but this is why I did it, is because one of the powers you are given the power to absolve people of their sins. And I am so fascinated by that. I want to go around and do my concerts and during an intermission, take people's confessions and it stays in the vault. I will not repeat them. And I want to help people get over these terrible sins that they've been carrying around and feeling guilty about for their entire lives.
I want to do the same thing during intermission, but I want to give hickeys.
That look like Jesus?
That look like Jesus. So Christine, you have been so busy. I was reading in February, there were 2 readings of a musical featuring 10 of your songs. The book is by Alice Scoville. I'm reading this. The first 2 readings were done by Sierra Boges, who made her debut as the Little Mermaid, and Josh Grissetti.
Yeah.
Yes. And who was from the cast of The Marvelous Miss Maisel, directed by Christine Petty, with the musical director Beth Falcone. And then in October, you did an 11 performance run by the York Theater with Kate Rockwell of Mean Girls and Taylor Cresur of Forbidden Broadway, again directed by Christine Petty, and again with Beth Falcone's musical director. So, and you also, I lived here in Piermont, New York. Betsy Francofini, you have these incredible books together.
Yes, and I gotta say, I would love to stop singing my own songs. I'm not a great singer, and I never dreamed of being on stage and living in New York and meeting. Like, I can't believe that this Michelle is you're the manager of the room of Swing 46. I've walked by it a million times, and I love swing dancing, and I wanted to go there.
Go!
Come on Saturday when I'm there. Come sing with me.
We'll go together, and you and I will dance together.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
And you just mentioned something, and I'm going to throw this out. Can I announce the album that's coming up?
Oh, sure.
She has an album coming out. Marisa Mulder, who is a phenomenal singer, will be singing all of your songs.
Yeah.
Well, 10 of your songs.
Yes. And well, I think it'll be about a dozen.
Okay.
But the fact is that I never dreamed of being a performer. I always dreamed of being a songwriter. And living in New York, I live in the building that Christine Petty lives in. It's all performers. And these are people who are meant, you guys are built for this stage. I'm not. And I'm finally hoping that I'm going to step away and let other people sing them and do it so much better than I can.
Well, let me ask you, which came first for you? The writing or singing your songs on stage? Because, I mean, you may think that you're not, but you are.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Richard.
It's true.
But, I started out as a songwriter when I was 12 years old. And I lived in Peekskill, not too far from where Pete Seeger lived. And I wanted to, he's been such an influence on my life, and Dave Van Ronk and Bob Dylan. And, have you all seen the movie, A Complete Unknown?
Not yet. It's on my list.
Oh, well, there's a lot of stuff that's made up in that movie. And I think that's why it didn't win any Oscars, because people instinctively knew that it wasn't the true story.
Wow.
So that's just from somebody who knows a little more than I want to know about it.
Well, I mean, and another sensitive New Age guy is one of my favorite songs. And, but your songs are sung by so many people. How are you finding that people are finding your songs?
Well, Sutton Foster was one of the first to ever record one of my songs. She does air conditioner, and she was putting together a show for Joe's Pub, and it was in January, and she wanted to do all warm weather songs because it was a very, very cold January. And so I went to see it, and I was so excited. She sang air conditioner, and I went backstage and I said hello to her. That was how we met. And she said, "Aren't you curious how I found your songs?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I guess I am." And, and she said she was on uh, like Facebook or one of those things. And she was looking for songs about warm weather. And she was using all these warm weather songs like Sweat and Heat. And she plugged in air conditioner and my song popped up. And I said, if Tony winning Broadway stars are trolling the internet looking for material, we should all have our songs out there. And I'm always if any of you guys are ever looking for special material, if I haven't written it, I will know the songwriter who has, who the theater world doesn't know. So it's a great way. I love being the connector between the theater world and the folk world.
Well, let me bring on our next guest. She's the last one waiting in the wings, and she is a phenomenal singer in Palm Springs. You two should hook up because, Gina, I would love to hear you sing one of Christine's songs. I think that, and I would recommend It's a Good Thing He Can't Read My Mind.
Wow.
Be a great song for you. So I'm doing my Dolly Levi bit and hooking you two up. So, Gina, what's on your mind? It can be about anything we've spoken about or anything else.
Well, I'm so happy I moved. I lived in Palm Springs since 2012, and I moved to a over 55 community in Palm Desert. And I am basically, this is the last stop before the rest home. And I'm excited to go to water aerobics and yoga and belong to the choir and everything. And I also had to give away a lot of stuff because I downsized. I'm only in a one bedroom. It's a large one bedroom, but I made a lot of people happy with gifts of things that I inherited 8 years ago and can't keep. So I made a lot of people happy. They have the place for them, and I gave away a lot of clothes and stuff. But I can tell you, I'm excited to be a songwriter at this age, and it's given me a new status. I don't know if this is true for you, Christine, but I went to a great singer show on Sunday, and I was just hoping to even have 2 words with her. And she came up to me and said, "Gina, I love your songs. Can I please sing them? Can I
Who was the
please have
singer?
coffee
Who
with
was the
you?"
singer?
It was Angie Delaire.
Okay, great.
Angela Delaire, and she has a voice like Shirley Bassey. She's got an
Wow.
incredible voice. So this is, I'll be 70 in July. I don't mind saying it. And,
Oh, you're a baby.
I'm a baby, but I mean, to have this kind of rejuvenation of my career, I've been in with Palm Canyon Theater for 2 years as an ensemble player, and I finally got a speaking role as Nurse Sample, and I usher at the theater when I'm not performing, and I'm ushering, and a man came up to me and he said, "Trash," which was my line in Sorted Wedding. I had like 5 lines in the whole thing, and he said, "We loved you in Sorted Wedding," and I'm going, "What's happening? What's happening?" People recognizing me. So it's kind of funny to actually have a kind of a rebirth.
That's great. That's great. Well, I want to talk a little bit. I mean, as the sideline in today's show is National Be Heard Day. And I'll explain basically what that means for you who don't know. National Be Heard Day. Before I go there, I'm going to back up for just a moment. Gina, you have a new CD that either just dropped or it's about to drop. Let's talk about that first.
Well, it's called Originals with Gina in the middle.
Oh, yeah.
And it has 17 songs that I co-wrote with Kevin Fisher, who is a well-known the music end of the songwriting team. And he's written for Sarah Evans and Rascal Flatts and Little Big Town and Uncle Cracker. And he's written for the TV shows True Blood and so on. And he's a platinum selling artist. And he chose me. I was in one of his classes and we collaborated, and he said, I'll do an album with you. So it was very exciting for me because I even wrote a song 30 years ago that finally found someone who could write the music to it.
That's great.
So it's exciting for me. It's I signed to a record label last June, and we've dropped 2 songs. The first one, Where I Begin, had 62,000 listens on SoundCloud, and the second one, Heartstrings, has 87,000 listens on SoundCloud, and both are have been introduced to Canadian radio. So that's where I started trying to get traction. And Heartstrings is doing very well in Saskatchewan.
Congratulations. That's wonderful.
That's impressive. Is there a theme to your album?
Well, I like to say it's about love, loss, and what I learned along the way.
Oh,
that's great.
But I'm in such a happy relationship for 4 years. I keep writing the same song over again, like this deliriously happy lyric, you know, you're like a song I love singing all night long, you know. It's like, and so I took 4 lyric writing classes, one with Marcy Heisler, who you probably know,
yeah.
one with Mark Winkler, who's a jazz pop artist in LA, and one with Kevin. I took 2 with Mark and 2 with Marcy, and one with Kevin, who is adult contemporary and country. So I got kind of all the bases covered. And it's the adult contemporary that matched my lyric, and the country too, but it's not a down home country, it's a more modern country. And what's interesting about it is people really are blown away by the songs. And I'm saying, I get stopped when I leave the stage at an open mic. Where do I get that song? I need it right now. And singers coming up, I have to sing your song. And I've written before, and I've done original material in my shows. I've been doing cabaret since 1986. At the debuted at the Gardenia. I'm going to be at the Gardenia with this show, Originals, on the 28th of March. At the Gardenia again after all these years. But what's amazing is that Kevin's creativity with the songs. He was a former staff writer for Warner Chappell. He's really knows how to write music, and he really was inspired by my songs. I had written 56 songs before I found Kevin to help me put them to music, and I said, I got one for you, but if you don't like it, I got a million more.
Good for you. I love it. I just absolutely love that. And writing and performing has no age limit on it, no expiration date. And that's absolutely wonderful. But as I was going to say, you know, this is National Be Heard Day. And, you know, there's so many, we know Amazon, for example, but there are a lot of great bookstores. I love mom and pop bookstores. And I always encourage everyone, and I'll talk about this a little at the end of the show, to call your favorite book store, the smaller bookstores, or the library, and say, do you have this book on your shelf? And if not, would you consider getting this book on your shelf? They just need to know that there's interest. And unless they know that there's interest, they don't even think about it sometimes. So I want to ask each of you, and I'm going to start with you, Michelle, if there's a small business that you love, that you go to, that you frequent, it could be in your neighborhood, it could be abroad, it could be anything that you want to give a shout out to today.
Well, I have to give a shout out to my hard work and my dear love Swing 46.
That's okay.
It's so hard. It's so hard. It's the little, we call it the little club that could, because it's so hard to keep it going. And it's, you know, it's a place of joy filled with lots of people who work really hard and just try to bring happiness to everybody, and I encourage everybody to come experience it because there's nothing like it in the world.
You're in New York, you've got to go. It's so much fun. I had the best time last week. David, yourself, and it
Well,
can
I
be your
think,
theater if you'd like.
well, yeah, I can't help but think, and this may be an obvious choice to all of us here, but go to the drama bookstore because there's no place like it in the world. And the fact that it was resurrected by theater people, and it's so wonderful. Not only do they cater to everything that we need, but you can go in there for hours and browse and have a cup of coffee and meet other people. It's a great place in Midtown to sit down and meet and network with other people and
find out what events are going on there.
Exactly. In fact, my husband is planning an event with a dear friend of ours for a book launch coming in the next couple of months, and they don't do
What's the
things
book?
like that.
What's the book?
Well, it's a wonderful. I can't think of the title of it now, but it was written by a wonderful teacher by the name of Carolyn Marcel Elmore, and it is essential for any singer because it's a healthy.
Is that Marcella Sings?
No, Carolyn is a performer. I did many shows with her. Her husband was the wonderful actor Steve Elmore, and she's been a terrific teacher for many years. And she just moved back to New York, and she's published a book, and she's getting her clientele back for her private singing in classes in New York. So, she's someone everybody should know about because she's one of the best vocal teachers, no matter what level you're at, or whether you're young or old. There's always something to be learned from Carolyn. And it's like any great technique, because I always tell this to, I coach actors sometimes. And I say, any technique is great if it is growth oriented, if it doesn't box you into a corner. So many actors say, well, I can only work with a director who works this way. And that you're not going to work if you do that. I had 4 years of intense Strasberg training when I was in college, and a lot of the other young actors. Well, what am I going to do when Then I worked with Susan Stroman many years later. Well, she doesn't work like they do at the Actor Studio. So if you can't adapt to that and work within those parameters, you're going to be lost. And I'm also reading a wonderful book by my friend Louis Stadlin, who
incredible book, incredible.
I was I was out in Sacramento doing Fiddler over the summer, and he came to visit, and he's always been a great champion of mine, and I adore him. And his books.
You did that with Perry. Oh God, my brain just went.
That's right. Same thing happens to me, Richard. I know it, and I know it until somebody asks, and then it goes right out of my head. And as soon as we're offline, I will know the names of everybody I've ever worked with. But yes.
Luke, is there a business that you?
Well, of course, Out of the Box Theater is very near and dear to my heart. I wish I could tell you what our next production is going to be. Because we don't really know right now for economic reasons and many things. I am actually probably going to step down as artistic director, but I'm going to stay on the board as an advisor. I have a CD that's been out for years too. It reminds me when Gina and Christine were talking about their own compositions. When I thought of doing a solo CD, I thought, well, I would love to do standards like everybody else. I'd love to get up and do my standard show tunes in my own way. But everybody has an album like that. So I thought, where will I find my niche? And
I got songs for you, baby.
Well, there you are. I worked with a composer in many of his shows over the years, and we discovered we had a lot of stuff in the can that we'd already recorded. So I did a whole album by the wonderful composer Elliot Weiss, and it doesn't exactly fly off the shelves, but I got to tell you, I'm very proud of it, and nobody has an album quite like it, and he's pleased. And you know, I didn't get to be the muse of Stephen Sondheim or John Kander, but Elliot wrote songs for me and mine. So and he's extremely talented, and so you know, you find your niche, and if you want to hear some sophisticated show music that nobody else does, that would be my my CD.
Well, send me the link and I'll make sure that it's on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, it's called David Edwards Giving Voice.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and it's on all the platforms.
Okay,
So
that's great.
anyway, I've given myself a big plug here, but
No, that's what the show's
what was
about.
the question? I lost
Well, we'll move on to Luke. Do you remember the question, Luke?
I do remember the question, and I would like to give a shout out to a publisher, which is Methuen Drama, which is a publisher specifically. It's an imprint of Bloomsbury Books, and they do specifically theater-related books. And I have a book with them called The Art of Writing for the Theater, and it's an introduction.
Great book.
Thank you very much. And it's an introduction to script analysis, theater criticism, and playwriting. And in addition to that, because I was writing it during the pandemic, and a lot of amazing artists were suddenly available, it also has interviews in it, excerpts from interviews with 16 Pulitzer Prize winning, world-class Tony-winning playwrights, everybody from David Lindsay Abaire, David Henry Hwang, Marcia Norman, Beth Henley. It's and every one of those interviews, Richard, it was like a masterclass for me. I got so much out of doing it, and I'm proud of the fact that the book is done very well. And since I'm also the head of playwriting at Cal State Fullerton here on the West Coast, I'm able to use that book when I teach. So my students are getting the advantage of it as well.
That's great. Christine?
If any of you are near Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, there is a small little restaurant called Cafe Carpe. That's CAFE. And there is a chef at Cafe Carpe who built a 65-seat theater right alongside the restaurant. And he puts on shows because he's kind of hasn't tried for commercial success. And he's just a fantastic chef. And so not only can they feed you, but then they can entertain you at the same time. So Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, right in the middle of the country.
That's wonderful. Gina?
Well, I'm taking a chance by telling you this, but I'm very impressed with a company that I tried out called A Better You, BETTERU, because I fought depression. I inherited it from my mother, who was a depressive. I tried medicine my whole life, and I saw these ads on social media for a ketamine therapy. I researched it and I did it, and it's relieved my depression, and I'm off my meds.
Good for you. And thank you for being honest and letting us know that. That's wonderful.
Well, it's a very, very interesting thing to be on a psychotropic drug that's controlled through a medical program. And it allowed me to have thoughts.
You're muted. Gina? Yeah, you're muted.
Hear you.
We can't hear you.
How this affects me in real life to have thoughts disappear. Thoughts that you have that were overwhelming and really burdening you and causing depression. To have this safe space to have the thoughts move on like a train go by. It is something that's carried on to my real life. And I can brag a moment. I moved 2 weeks ago. All my boxes are put away. Everything is organized. I am completely on top of things, and my storage unit is empty.
Well, I love that.
This could not have happened. So I'm excited to have this rebirth and to actually have the energy to do something about it.
Well, that's great. I want to thank you all. I want each and every one of you to send me the link to what you just shared with us, so that I can have all those links on my YouTube channel. I'm going to give each of you a chance to have your final word in just a moment. Keep it brief because we've run a little over, and I want to end with another clip from Christine. So I want to thank you all for being here today. I end all my shows with the same message, and that is to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go when you get your go back to your email list or whatever. The fifth email that you get, instead of responding with an email, respond with a phone call. Let that person know the impact that they've made on your life on some level. Even if you don't know that person, if they're reaching out to you for some reason, the fact that they took the time to write you is an impact. So take the time to let these people know that they've made an impact on your life. And by doing so, you're going to make an impact on their life. I have a dear friend, Sean Moniger, and he always says we're all in the same boat, but we are in different size boats. And I always say, I don't care what size boat you're on, as long as you have a skipper by your side. I want to recommend this book that I'm reading called, it's backwards, I know. It's called Inner Excellence. And it is an amazing book. I just started reading it, and I just absolutely love it. And as you say your final word today, when you finish, you will pick the next person, and so on and so on. And when the last person says goodbye, I will run the clip that I'm going to air with all of you. But I want you each to name something that you read this week that inspired you on any level. And with that, I'm going to leave the screen, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Gina.
Well, I read a quote. It says, "Greatness courts failure." So I'm doing really great. I'm just trying to be funny. I'm going to pick someone next. I pick Luke.
Thank you, Gina. One of the things that comes to mind is one of my favorite spiritual leaders, a lady named Terry Cole Whitaker. And in these chaotic times, I turn back to her from time to time. And one of the things that I read of hers that really resonated with me this week was, whenever I forget who I am, I start loving others. David.
Well, I'm going to do one of my greatest hits here because I'm going to mention that quote from Joan Rivers that I saw this week. When you're walking through hell, when you're going through hell, walk faster. And thank you, Richard, for bringing us all together and for the passion that you bring to the arts. And I'll never forget when you came out to Westchester Broadway Theater, the much lamented, lost Westchester Broadway Theater, to see the show that my husband and I wrote that we were in for Christmas. And you gave us a big plug. And thank you for that. And thank you for your continued passion and devotion to people in the arts. Michelle.
Thank you, David. The quote that I read recently, and it's not necessarily, it doesn't have it's just randomly one that I read recently that kind of struck a chord, was, "However vast the darkness, we must supply our own light." And I thought that was quite poignant in these times, by Stanley Kubrick, of all people. Just random. But I do want to thank you, Richard, for being a positive person who's always giving light to others, always doing what you can to help us and put us in the spotlight. And even though we are all going through hard times, we are lucky to be in this wonderful, creative, supportive group of folks in the arts. And it brings us all together and shares the joy and struggles and love that we all share. So thank you.
Well, I would like to end with Dave Van Ronk. And Dave said many things, and one of them was, "It is very hard to write a good political song, but it is very easy to write a bad one. So I challenge all you songwriters out there who are overwhelmed by the politics of the situation, and just keep working, and you'll get a great song out of it. And thank you so much, Richard, for giving us this platform. Every Sunday night at 5, we gather around our computer screens. In Chicago, New York, Rochester, Geneva, Vienna, and other points in between. And we talk about the week that was and what lay ahead. We ask Brother Jimmy, got a letter? And he nods his head. When our dad was in the Army, in the thick of World War II, he wrote long distance to our mom, as lonely soldiers do. He wanted to propose to her, but her dad, the judge, said, "No. Wait until the war is over, then maybe give it a go." So Dad was left to woo her with his heart and with his pen. Though they both knew, with the world at war, they might never meet again. In his letters, he called her Princess, and we try not to roll our eyes. We only knew our dad as Dad, not some lovesick, goofy guy. Mom saved all his letters, all 474. Jimmy reads 1 or 2 each week. If we ask nicely, he'll read more. It's a side of our parents none of us had known about. A soldier and his princess, while the world at war was acting out. He could never tell her where he was, just the country he was stationed, though sometimes he might hint about his next destination. In one letter, Dad grew wistful as he dreamily reminisced about that time in Grand Central that they had their first kiss. He wrote how the bustling crowd paid them no mind at all, as they rushed this way and they rushed that way, moving through the cavernous hall. But the moment meant so much to him. He could not understand why strangers didn't stop and stare, or at least give them a hand. So every now and then, if in the neighborhood by chance, I stop into Grand Central. It's my tribute to romance. I stand in that gray space. I look up and around, not far from the crab, way up there, 11 stories above the ground. There's a 9-inch by 15-inch patch, just to the northwest. Perhaps a bit of history will illuminate it best. You see, work started in 1903. It took 10 years to complete. By the 1990s, Grand Central ceiling was dirty. Not just pollution from the street. No, it wasn't diesel fumes, but cigarettes, pipes, and cigars. Yep, the biggest culprit of them all were nicotine and tar. So the cleaners, armed with Q-tips and with simple green, vowed that they would not stop scrubbing till the whole ceiling was sparkling clean. But then they got an idea to leave one rectangle dark. A big argument ensued. You could hear them shout all the way to Central Park. But the cleaners won and got their way. That tiny patch you see, right near the crab to the northwest, that's how dirty the ceiling used to be. And now I have to wonder, was that rectangle witness to the moment when Dad kissed our mom way back in 1942? The soldier and the princess did give it a go. Their 9 kids all meet up on Zoom Sundays, now you know. Yes, every Sunday night at 5, we gather round our computer screens in Chicago, New York, Rochester, Geneva, Vienna, and all points in between. And we talk about how our week went. And Jimmy reads a letter.
We hear our parents fall in love, and that makes us feel better.